All right. So here is the conclusion of chapter 2, believe it or not. The conclusion for chapter 2. We're going to cover it in 2 videos, 2 short videos. And the first one is something that will come in play in chapter 4. Okay, and it's called the right angle congruence theorem. The right angle congruence theorem. And all that does is it just tells you that all right angles are congruent. So if they tell you that you have 2 right angles, how can you say that they are congruent? By the right angle congruence theorem. Put this one away, okay? Put it away for chapter 4. We're going to come back and we're going to use it. I'm going to say, remember we did this in chapter 2? Okay. Then we have 2 theorems that I don't think are that useful, but I do want to go over them with you. I wouldn't say you have to memorize them. This one you should memorize, okay? But these I don't think you should. Congruent supplement theorem. And what the congruent supplements theorem says is if 2 angles are supplementary to the same angle, then they are congruent. So if I said the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180, and then I said the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 3 equals 180, well, if these are the same and these are the same, logical thinking would tell you that then these are the same. And that's what it's going to tell you. Okay, you would say the measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle 3. If 2 angles, okay, you take 2 angles and you get this one angle. If this one angle is supplementary to both of these angles, then these 2 angles must be congruent. And then there's another one that says congruent complements theorem. And kind of like that, if I said measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 90, and if I said the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 4 equals 90, well, if these are equal and these are equal, it makes sense that those are equal. Or I should say, if these are equal and these are equal, it makes sense that these 2 are equal. So when you have the congruent complements theorem, if you have 2 angles that are complementary to the same angle, okay, then these 2 angles must be congruent. Measure of angle 2 equals the measure of angle 4. Okay? So this next one is important, and the next one we are going to see, and we're going to use it. Okay? We are going to use it, so you do want to pay attention to that. And it's called the linear pair postulate. Linear pair postulate. The LPP. Yeah, you know me. Okay, so we have the linear pair postulate, and this comes with a picture. Linear pair. What does a linear pair mean? Linear, line, pair, 2. Linear means line, pair means 2. Okay, so what we say is if 2 angles form a linear pair, then the angles are supplementary. 2 angles form a line, 2 angles form a linear pair. We know from chapter 1 that the amount of degrees in a straight line is 180. So if you have 2 angles that make up a straight line, 2 angles that make up a straight line, it means that they are supplementary. So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180 degrees. Okay? That's kind of important. You're going to see that one. You're going to see that one a few times. Okay? And this next one you're going to see over and over again as well. And this is called the vertical angles theorem. I like to call it the VAT. Okay? Vertical angles theorem. And all this says is, we already know this, but vertical angles are congruent. So if I had a picture that looked like this, and I had 1 and 2, and then I had 3 and 4, okay? Vertical angles are congruent. Angle 1 would then be congruent to angle 2, and angle 3 would be congruent to angle 4. If you have angles that are vertical angles, then they are congruent, okay? So you're going to see different problems that look like this, okay? And I'll try to give you an example of one so you can kind of get a feel for how we're going to look at those, okay? So, I don't know. I don't have my book with me. If I had something that looked like this, and we did some of these in chapter 1, okay, where you had to search out for angles that were equal, that had the same letter, and then say, okay, how are they related? Are they vertical angles? Or do they form a linear pair? Or are they supplementary, which means the same thing? So I don't know. I'm taking a chance here. I'm taking a shot in the dark to see if we can get this to work, okay? So let's say I had this. Let's say this was 6x plus 10, and I don't know. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that, okay? I don't want to pick something that's not necessarily going to work, okay? Just because that's not the way we should do things. So you'll see some problems, okay? Now when we have problems like this, if this has an x and this has an x, we would say, how are these angles related? They're supplementary. So I would take whatever's here plus whatever's here, and I would set it equal to 180, okay? If they drew a picture like this, and I had x's here and x's here, and then there were y's here and y's here, I wouldn't take these two and set them equal to 180, because then I'd have two letters that I don't know. So I would take whatever's here, set it equal to whatever's here, because they're vertical angles. Solve for x. I would take whatever's here and set it equal to whatever's there, because they're vertical angles, and it means that they're congruent. Okay? So that gets us through. We're going to practice some problems like that. We will. That's going to get us through chapter 2, believe it or not. Okay? So hopefully that made sense. Like I said, it's not the most important chapter in the book, but it is one that we had some things that we had to go over. So hopefully that made sense.